We go. Well, hello, and a very warm welcome back to the Andrew Eborn Show with me, Andrew Eborn. Delighted to be joined yet again by actor, musician, provocateur, and unapologetic cultural warrior, Laurence Fox. How are you doing, Laurence?
I'm all right, thanks, Andrew. I'm just on the I'm on the back end of a one of those. Well,
Yes, well,
I'm on the back end of what they used to shut the world down for a year and a half.
I thank you. Yes, it's all good. So, and talking about being shutting the world down, you posted very recently that you're going to take a break from social media for at least 3 months, starting on March the 10th. So just coming up. What was the tipping point that made you decide to step away from what you call the funny little anxiety boxes?
It was quite. I was sat there and I was thinking, I'm banging my head against a brick wall about the issues that I care about, and I thought, well, there's lots of people in this country that are not particularly interested, or and therefore, if you're not interested in something, you're not curious about it, and therefore you're not informed about it. So I thought I would try the experiment of spending time away from the anxiety box, as we call them, and b to find out what sort of information penetrates the uninterested observer, which will be me. So I mean, I never watch the news ever unless it comes across me on social media. So, and I'll catch bits of Sky News and BBC and various on there. But I just thought it'd be interesting to know. And also, I have a strange feeling and a strange suspicion that the world in 3 months' time, at the very least, is going to be exactly the same but worse as the world is now. So that's my view on that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned you call it doom scrolling. I mean, how do you think the constant engagement with platforms such as X has affected your perspective on the world over the last few years?
Well, it's sort of we went from my mum was a very avid watcher of the nightly news. She loved it, and she was cynical, so she didn't buy the propaganda element of the nightly news. But it was once a day, and then you got the World at One on BBC, didn't you? Where they did that, and it's sort of then morphed into this 24-hour news cycle. And then X and Twitter, in its previous iteration, managed to turn it into a 24-second news cycle. And for people like me who are quite addictive personalities, you can notice by the cigarette I have in my hand, it becomes quite addictive. And when your personal life is going well, and you still find yourself feeling a bit uppity, you go, well, I wonder what is causing that. And I think, oh, well, maybe it's just because you're still plugged into something that, you're frustrated that people aren't awake to some of the problems that, you and I have talked about, amongst others. And you're also aware of the fact that the problems have a way of working themselves out without someone having to constantly try and bash people around the head. And I do feel like I've been banging my head against a brick wall for a while. And without purpose, I think you suffer a bit. And I think the best way to re-engage with purpose is to do something rather than to respond to something. So yeah, that's the thinking behind that.
Yeah, well, then they sort of mention it. I mean, they started off with blackberries. They say it's crackberries. I think Madonna famously slept with it under her pillow, and it's the first thing that people touch in the morning, the last thing they touch at night. With apologies to their partner, it's their smartphone, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're planning to monitor the effect of this on your break, on your mood. What changes are you hoping to see in yourself, and how are you going to measure those?
Well, I know already what, because I obviously, being me and a bit of a control freak, I've already done some preparation. So I've practiced. I've had some dummy runs of
How long
uh,
did they last?
of not taking my phone to the shop.
Right.
If I didn't need to take my phone to the shop, various things like that. I think I built a window seat last week in the house from scratch.
Right.
So, I because I like making things. I like making noise. I like shifting people's opinions. I like that sort of thing. But fundamentally, I like making things. So I now have whoever, God willing, I live in this house for the rest of my life. But if I don't, whoever moves into this house after is going to go, oh, look, someone built that. That's a DIY job. You can tell because it doesn't quite fit. But it fits well enough for no one to notice unless they put a very Sherlock Holmesy type eye on it.
Right. And there's a wonderful satisfaction about creating things like that, isn't there? I mean, you also mentioned that you hope that the conversation would move on whilst you're away. What do you think online discourse is going to look like when you return? Do you think it's probably going to be more of the same or something entirely new?
No, I think it'll be much more of the same, but steadily worse. I think that the issue, which you and I have talked about this. I've sort of voiced my concerns about reform, and they've now come true. I voiced my concerns on. I'm not sort of setting myself up as a prophet, but I know where this is heading. I know exactly where it's heading. And it's heading to the places where free speech. The reason why free speech is being shut down is because those that are in control of our lives and waste our money by demanding our taxes, they don't want us to talk about the things that are about to become public discourse. And the things that are going to become public discourse are the effect that Islam is having on the United Kingdom. It's the most important topic of conversation in our country, and no one wants to talk about it. And hence you get the labels of Islamophobia and racism every time you even just vaguely mention the fact that you don't like seeing severed legs on the roads of Mannheim. And bear in mind that it's not more than 4 years. So I think it's 3 and a bit years since Germany let in 1.5 million immigrants in 1 year from Syria and other places, and they're now reaping the whirlwind of that. And Britain has just imported 2 million in 2 years, and we're about to reap the whirlwind of that as well. So I am just aware of the fact that these things are going to become very, very much more prominent conversations in public, and people are going to get very upset about them. And I think, it's no harm to yourself to say, actually, I'm not controlled by, look, I've got two of them.
Right.
In this stupid worldview that I could manage to separate one from the other, and that I can have a personal phone and a work phone. It doesn't make any difference. They all end up doubling out into each other. You, for example, are on my personal phone. So you never know. I just don't think there's any harm in just stepping away. What I'm going to do, what I am going to do, the difficult things are not so much ignoring social media, because I think that's going to be fun. It is going to be, do I listen to news podcasts? And I've come to the conclusion, no, I'm not. So I'm going to find, and I'm actually going to ask people tomorrow online, because tomorrow is my last day,
Yep.
if there's anything people can recommend that is topical and interesting, but isn't very much 24-hour news cycle. Oh, do you see what Trump did here, or do you see what Zelensky did there? That I'm done with for 3 months, and I'm very really looking forward to that, actually, because you can achieve so much. I listened to today. I listened to the Sean Ryan show. Do you
Yes,
listen
yeah,
to
yeah,
that?
absolutely.
Yeah, I listened to an 88-year-old guy give his life story while I was cleaning up dog shit and gardening. And, and I was like, I'm double. This is a double header. This is a great benefit to everyone. I'm listening to the man's great story, and I'm not complaining about the fact that my poop scooper isn't big enough.
Right. Well, I know, absolutely. But there's some stories, and it's so important that you and I, and actually not enough people shine a spotlight on. One of which is obviously Tommy Robinson's mistreatment is boosting his popularity. He's been in solitary confinement now for over 130 days. It's been labelled as mental torture by psychologists due to his ADHD and complex PTSD. Do you think the state is deliberately trying to break him, and if so, what's their end game?
I think they're trying to kill him. That's what I think they're trying to do. I think they're trying to kill him. And one of the things that I've learned over the years of being, not on Tommy's level, but but being persecuted by these people, is that they don't want you around. So I think that they're trying to kill him. And I think that they're not going to succeed, because I think that he is touched by a power much higher than any political party would be, or any political commentator would be. He's been put on a path to shine a light on something. If you were dishing out roles in the how to dismantle the world order, you probably wouldn't put Tommy Robinson top of your list of people that you would sort of give that role to. But he has embraced his role. He's made mistakes, none of them in any way, in my view, warranting the type of persecution he's received. And I think the state want him dead. That's what I think. And I think the state want me dead. And I think the state want a lot of people that don't agree with them dead, so they can continue to rake in taxes and spend our hard-earned money on diversity, equity, and inclusion officers. And I think that their day of reckoning is coming, and they know it, because Elon Musk has freed up the information transfer between individuals, so you can share. A random person can share huge quantities of information with a very, very wide audience. And I think the state know that the numbers up, and I think they want Tommy dead. In my dream world, Tommy is released, and we together, who knows with people, you never know with people. And when I say together, I don't mean me and Tommy, I mean myself, Tommy, and a lot of people come together and create a political movement which brings down this disgusting, vile shithouse of a government that we have, and starts providing an alternative which is actually of the people, by the people, and for the people. That's what I think about this stuff, and I think it will happen. I think it's unavoidable, actually. I think we're heading towards a wall. The government is driving us at high speed towards a wall, and it's trying to tell us to take our seatbelts off, and we're not going to.
Right. As you know, Errol Musk, Elon's dad, is on the phone, on the show all the time, and on the phone as well. He compares Tommy to Nelson Mandela, and he does believe he thinks he will one day be prime minister. Would Tommy make a good prime minister?
I think anyone would make a better prime minister than the current crop of arseholes. Sorry to be rude, but it is Friday night. It's Friday night, Saturday night. Yeah, I think anyone who's put themselves on for no personal gain. Tommy hasn't gained from any of this other than a lot of fans, but he's not doing this because he wants a lot of fans. If you spend time with Tommy, he's not someone that he's actually shy about his fans. I do think Nelson Mandela I do think they're comparable, actually. Nelson Mandela was locked up on Robben Island for 27 years. Tommy has been put in, I mean, their politics is slightly different, one has to admit, but, there's an argument to say Nelson Mandela is the worst everything that happened in South Africa, but let's not go there. I would love to see any man or woman who speaks from the heart on those benches. I would.
Yeah. And obviously we concern about how Tommy's doing, which is why it's so important to continue shining the spotlight. You're switching off from social media. Will you still be in touch with Tommy?
I feel pretty bad, actually. So I was emailing Tommy a lot at the beginning, and then I was looking forward to going and visiting him. So I stopped emailing him, and my visit was cancelled a couple of weeks ago. So I need, actually, one of the things I do need to do on my switch off social media thing is get back to corresponding with him directly. But I think it's appalling that we're being stopped from seeing him, and this is the same people that have stopped Shabina Mahmood and people like that who were in charge of this stuff. They could stop this in a second if they wanted, but they don't. So I will, one on my to-do list of things to do while I'm not doom scrolling is to re-engage. But what's so fascinating about Email a Prisoner, or whatever the app is, it's a terrible app, government-run app, is you have to pay money to email a prisoner. So it's like hospital parking. You not only do you pay for the benefit of having the NHS, you then pay for the terrible NHS, by the way, National Death Service that it is. You then pay for the privilege of having to park there to go and see your loved one die. And so yeah, on my list of things that I'm going to do is re-engage with Tommy, check in on him. But whenever I've been through a difficult personal struggle, I have always thought I've looked to the end of it and to go and to get your head down and get through it. So I will be contacting him on Monday and telling him that, the whole country is behind him. And also in the current political climate, we need Tommy Robinson. We need, I spoke to Rupert Lowe this morning. I can't really go into what we spoke about, but to put it this way, he's not unsympathetic to the problems that Tommy is going through.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because we were going to come on to the Farage and Lowe debacle, and I've had Ben Habib on the show several times, and he was saying when he left Reform, Nigel was singing "The Sun Has Got His Hat On," so there's no love lost there. You've been quite critical about Reform. What are the biggest problems there, and is there a way to unite the right?
The biggest problem with reform is that it's a political Ponzi scheme that takes money from the average punter with the false promise of hope. So that's the biggest problem with reform. It's an unaccountable political Ponzi scheme, which lives solely in service of Nigel Farage getting revenge on the Conservatives because they didn't want it to be part of their party. That's the major problem with reform. The practical problem with reform is the fact that people quite like them, and that's an even worse problem because they don't realise that they're being paid, and people are very happy to give 25. It's very difficult to raise a crowdfunder for someone who's been fired from their job from Asda because they happen to say that you shouldn't chop off children's willies or something, or a school teacher or whatever. But my lord, the number of people that are queuing up to give Nigel Farage 25 pounds a month so that Mohammed Zia Youssef can use that money to hire a KC to try and besmirch the good name of Rupert Lowe. And reform possibly, and I think that this will end up being, in fact, I know I'm right, so there's no point in even positing the fact that I might be right. Nigel Farage is going to be looked back on as the one man who was always at the centre of every single time the establishment was challenged, and that challenge was scuppered. And that's what Nigel Farage is. He is the worst thing that has ever happened to Britain, in my view.
And do you think there's a way of uniting the right?
Yeah, there is a way of uniting the right, but it's not the right. We're not right. The people that voted for Brexit in the Red Wall were not right wingers. These people are not right wingers. These are patriotic left wingers. They're the kind of people I come across a lot of very left leaning people who really sanctify freedom of speech. They really, really, really sanctify it. It used to be the bedrock of left wingers. It's not really about the right. It's about what Trump has done, which is make this huge tent of which, almost everyone is in. It's like, we're not keen on the mutilation of children. We're not keen on men and women's sports. We're not keen on sanctifying people's skin color ahead of their character. It's not a political issue. Ultimately, it's not a political issue. It has a political outcome, but it's not a political issue.
And I think that's right, because the label, people label far right whenever it's sort of views they don't sort of agree with, and they're far too liberal with those labels. And it's much better to turn around and say, look, there are policies that really matter. Another person who you're very close to is obviously Calvin Robinson. You talked about crowdfunding. He had a tough start to 2025. He lost his priest license with the Anglican Catholic Church after mimicking Elon's salute at the National Pro-Life Summit. He's now crowdfunding for 350,000, as I understand it, for a house in Michigan. What's the latest with Calvin?
I just spoke to Calvin. It's a really unpleasant situation for him to be in because he doesn't know where he's going to wake up from one morning to the next. And bearing in mind that he's supposed to be part of a Christian ministry, you would have thought that a believer in God would have protected him, whether he was errant or not in their regard. But the problem with the Christian church is the Christian church has the modern Christian church has no understanding of how you cope with an enemy. And that's the main thing. They all fall on this sort of Sermon on the Mount, woke, turn the other cheek thing, which I completely understand what the Sermon on the Mount is, but it was built on a million other things written in the Bible, right? And the Christian church just believed that you just got to accept everyone, you've got to do everything, except people that do mock, from my heart to yours, salutes from Elon Musk. I think Christianity is in a crisis. And I think Calvin is not in a crisis because he knows exactly what he thinks about stuff. So he's okay. It's difficult for him because he's he's a newbie in America, and in America, cash is king. So if you want to buy a house, you're going to have to chalk up. If you haven't lived here forever, you're going to have to chalk up a large amount of money in order to do that. But you can talk about the pluses and minuses of whether getting Calvin a house is a good idea. But I would say that he, as someone who's steadfastly stood for the truth, and Calvin is absolutely in need of all of our protection and our love and our support. And if that means dipping into your pocket, then that means dipping into your pocket to help him.
And last time we spoke, you said you were just about to break some news about Calvin as you're about to switch off from social media. What is that news?
Well, that was it. It was to launch his crowdfunder.
It was the 350 grand. Okay.
Yeah, it was to say that we're going to, the way to stop people being cancelled is to make sure that they can survive.
And has he sorted out the visa then? Because that was an issue at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah, he has. And there was a few days of phone calls, and I'll tell you something, I didn't call a single UK politician, not one. Not one. I called my contacts in America. Calvin called his contacts in America. Others called their contacts in America. And we got to the highest levels of American government that way because they give a shit about free speech. They care.
Yeah.
And in England, we don't.
Yeah, no, and that's as J.D. Vance said. It was a much bigger threat than the Russians. He was saying is the threat to free speech in England. I want to briefly just get your thoughts on how Trump's doing. He's setting the world alight. He did 300 executive orders in the first 100 days. He's got the latest sort of thread, if you like, on trying to sort out the world whilst you're on your hiatus. He's threatened Hamas, saying they're going to have hell to pay if they don't release these hostages. Do you think this is effective?
Well, it's the seriously, not literally issue with Trump always, isn't it? Is the fact that when he says you're going to have hell to pay, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to drop a Moab on you tomorrow. What it means is this is going to be a major issue, and it's going to dictate how we move forward. And it's why Zelensky was so disastrous in his negotiations with Trump, because he started to think that he could, as J.D. Vance said, litigate this problem in front of the American media. Trump doesn't like dead people, like most human beings. Unless you're a leftist, we don't really like killing people. It's not our modus operandi. So I think that Hamas are on warning that he was saying about bodies, like who keeps a body? Who does it? He's right. Like who does that? Who keeps bodies? These people are barbarians at the end of the day. And if the West is to mean anything at all, it's a superior set of values to the cultural values of places where you can get married to a 9-year-old girl in Iraq, and where child sexual exploitation is acceptable. So I think what Trump's going to do is he's going to make it untenable for Hamas to exist. And he's going to do that probably via capitalism, I would say, rather than bombs. So, his Mara-Gaza-Largo idea is quite a good one, which is say, well, if American interests are now parked in your back garden and you want to bomb them, then you're now attacking Americans, and we're going to have to send some F-16s over and bomb a few of your houses, But ultimately, I don't think Trump doesn't strike me as a person who wants war. He doesn't look like
he wants peace, but it's on sort of on his terms. It's very much it's transactional, isn't it? He talks about the Gaza Riviera.
It's deterrence, and the whole point of having a global moral leader is that you deter those that wish evil on people from doing evil by saying that if you do evil, you may get a Moab dropped in your house.
Yeah.
And it's not like Obama, who sat there and did an apology tour throughout his term as president to say, America's dreadful and all that stuff that he did. Trump is like, no, America's great, and we're going to be great, and we're going to make the world great. He's a very optimistic guy. You can tell from seeing him, speaking to him, and
Oh
listening
no,
to him.
absolutely, and it's nice seeing the picture of Calvin on his social media. He's very proud of that picture with him and Trump. And it was we made this point beforehand. The difference, the positive message from Trump at the inauguration was great. One thing he has done is obviously he's shaking everything up, including his own press room. He's kicked out Reuters and AP to make room for Breitbart and OAN. Do you buy that when we talk about freedom of speech and so on and so forth? Is he controlling the narrative, and is that something that sits well with you?
I think it's a dangerous thing to do because it's you shouldn't just because you've got someone you agree with in office that them censoring those that you don't agree with is probably not a good idea. But I can see that you look at the percentage of positive reporting on Trump leading up to the election was minimal, and the negative reporting was very strong. So I can see him trying to instill some balance is a good idea. But I always believe in a free press, and I think the press should be free. And that comes with the criticisms that you get. But I can understand why he's done it. And I do think that there are major news organizations now that exist. That, you look at the Daily Wire and various other people who actually do deserve a seat in that press room. But the press poll, the poll that to have to follow him around every day, it's an expensive job.
Yeah.
And that needs to be done by someone serious. So I'm not overly thrilled with some of the over excessive things he does, but I don't think they're the end of the world. I just think that wait till you get a Democrat president in and they ban Fox News, who has been there since the start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you very famously on most of the posts was just about to leave. You obviously criticise things, your frustration with modern Britain, things like woke culture and political correctness. What's the one change you'd most like to see in the UK during your social media hiatus?
A complete ban of anyone who is not a Christian standing for elected office in the United Kingdom.
Okay, so it's Christianity, which is an important role now, an important thread throughout your own life. Was that as a result of Calvin or as a result of your father?
Well, no, it's the result of my entire cultural heritage. It's the thing I inherited. That all of our laws are based on Christian law. If you look at Lady Justice, she's blind. She's blind to the color of your skin. She's blind to your sexual orientation. She's blind to all these sort of things. And there's a reason why she is, because the Christian faith teaches one that every human being is created in the image of God and is sacred. Each individual human life is sacred, and that doesn't apply to other religions. So and other faiths. So all I'm doing is trying to uphold my cultural heritage. I don't, and my cultural heritage happens to be a Christian one. So I don't want MPs swearing on the Quran that they're going to serve our possibly Muslim king. I think that we need to be unashamedly and confidently British, and in order to be that way, to have that confidence, you have to accept the heritage which you've inherited, which is a Christian law legal based system. It's not a preference based system. It's not a case based system. It's a equality under the law for all based system, and that is a Christian notion. It's not a notion that you can apply to any other religion on earth.
Yeah. Finally, then, Laurence, when you come back in 3+ months, you say it's at least 3 months. What's the first thing you're going to look for on X to see what you've missed?
I imagine nothing. I imagine I'll carry on going. But who knows? I hope that there is a time coming where people will want to stand together and they will want to do so in a democratic way, and they will want to there will be a desire for a political movement that is not about someone's ego. It's about the issues where based solely on free speech, and I would want to play whatever small part I can play in that. But I'm the days of banging one's head against a brick wall are over for me. Really, now I have no interest in it. It's like wake up or shut up.
Wake all, all shut up. Absolutely, a fine way to finish. And Laurence, I wish you every success with that endeavour. I mean, we might stay connected in the more traditional ways, but for now, thank you very much for joining us.
Namaste.